So my name is Jen Clark, and I own Roots Farm in Poulsbo, Washington. We're up in the most northwest corner of the United States. Next slide. So we get about 35 inches of rain a year. Our soil type is Ragnar. I live right on the Hood Canal, and our soil is pretty sandy. Just a quick story. I got an NRCS grant, and you have to erect your high tunnel before the inspector comes out to reimburse you. And so he came out and he walked in my high tunnel and he goes, "Oh, you brought in some sand." And I said, "No, that's my dirt." So basically, we bought 10 acres of beach, and it's kind of been an uphill battle since amending the soil. But anyways, so we're on 10 acres. We're on the Kitsap Peninsula up by the Olympic Peninsula. Um, and I'm here today to talk about no-till dry farming with integrated animal systems. Next slide. So my husband and I have been at our current site for about 12 years. I've been farming with my farm partner for that. Her name is Nikki Parks, for about 12 years. Next slide. Here's a little bit about the farm. So we wound up farming this way. My first year, I originally farmed on an acre. We bought 10. My poor intern the first year, all she did was weed. We had really sandy soil, which wouldn't hold any nutrition. It wouldn't hold water. And there was a farm that we had visited in Squim, and the farmer farmed in wood chips. And so I sent out a letter to all the local arborists inquiring about wood chips. And so within a couple weeks, I was getting weekly deliveries of wood chips. And so I kind of accidentally wound up dry farming. I didn't know it was called dry farming. It was just what I did out of necessity to retain moisture and create more organic matter in our soil. Um, Next slide. So here's a picture of one of our fields. This was before we mulched, but this was a hand-trenched potato field. And this was just a weedy disaster within a couple months. Next slide. Our farm is full of natural springs, and so some of the fields, it's a little easier not to water. Next slide. A little bit about the animals on our farm. We have a diversified animal and vegetable farm. This is our Great Pyrenees Hugo, just some cute photos, who lives with the sheep and goats full time. Next slide. We also have goats and sheep on about 8 acres of pasture. Next slide. We also keep between 10 and 20 hogs. Next slide. And also ducks and chickens, and I'll get into a little more how we utilize all our livestock on our farm. Next slide. And also geese. Next slide. And the cats, because they're cute. The next slide. And some years back, we actually raised rabbits on pasture and moved them around, but we're not currently doing that. Next slide. So the crops. So we are a diversified vegetable and fruit farm. We grow quite a few perennial crops, fruit trees, grapes, herbs, asparagus, artichokes. Next slide. And your basic, squash, summer squash, garlic, potatoes, salad. Next slide. So what is no-till farming? Next slide. So conventional farming with tractors kills soil biology, creates a lot of weeds, and we just really struggled the first couple years with tilling and came up with better systems. Next slide. So our farm is mostly mulch with wood chips, and we have a giant mycelium mat. You can go and dig up our mulch, and you'll find a lot of mycelium. Next slide. I also call myself a worm farmer. It promotes biological activity. We have lots of worms. Next slide. Integrated animal systems. So we are human powered, and we utilize our animals in field prep whenever possible. We rotate pigs. Every field at one point on our farm had pigs. We use them to remove blackberries, perennial weeds, and they're just great overall at clearing ground. Next slide. They're also great at composting any farm waste they would consume. Next slide. And of course, fertilize. Next slide. They are rotated in portable Porta-Hut pig shelters, and we use hog panels. So we don't use electric because we've had pigs get out. Next slide. So typically we will rotate pigs in an area for about a month. And we have a couple different shelters. And so they will clear the area. And once they've pretty much turned it into a moonscape, we'll do some more work. Next slide. So you can see here that there's really not much left. So after the pigs have been moved to the next area, you can see in the background of this photo grass, and that was what the area in front looked like a few weeks prior. And so we go in there and we'll remove any remaining weeds, blackberries, rocks, and flatten it. Next slide. Because my area or my soil is so sandy, we typically take, once the pigs have been moved, we do a light sprinkling of lime to adjust the pH. I have really sandy soil, and some of my initial soil tests were around 4.8 to 5. So we had very, very acidic soil. Next slide. Next slide. So after it's been limed, oops. I don't know what happened there. Anyways, it kind of skipped over the last picture really quickly. But after the pigs have been moved, we typically mulch. In the field before that, we had mulched with straw. Depending on certain areas where we have Canada thistle or other extremely tenacious wheat, we're going back. So in this field, we're prepping a dry farmed plot for actually this spring, and we got about 6,000 pounds of round bales from Finn River. And so we've been spreading organic straw. Next slide. So anyways, I was talking about depending on the weed pressure. So you can see in this photo, we have already moved the pigs over. This area had massive brambles, and so we use byproducts, brown cardboard and coffee sacks, depending on how bad the weed pressure is. And so this we had to weed block. Next slide. So one thing we have done is we incorporate animal systems in all of our fields. So either at one point in time they've had pigs rotated through all our fenced fields. We actually have attached coops, chicken coops, duck coops. And in the off season, we actually have doors to be able to port the animals into the field. So this is connected to our orchard. So in the off season, when there's no fruit, we can let poultry in to help with slug control, pest control, and fertilizing. Next slide. Here's a picture of another tractor that we have. We used it for chickens and we would rotate them around in fields. A lot of times we'll put chickens in if after the pigs have come out to help fertilize more and till the soil. Next slide. Here's a photo. We have about 4 rabbit tractors. So we would, in our flat fields, we created portable pens that we would rotate, I don't know, 8 to 12 rabbits, and the soil after they were moved through is just beautiful. Next slide. Different types of mulch we use. Next slide. We try to reuse as much that would normally go to landfills or be recycled. So every year we get 150 to 200 cardboard pumpkin boxes from a local grocery store. They're super thick, so areas where the weed pressure is pretty bad, we're able to utilize those. And they will typically decompose within 12 to 18 months. Next slide.
Oh, perfect. Agreed.
Another type of weed block we get, or mulch, we get coffee sacks from local coffee roasters. And so those can be used in conjunction with cardboard boxes or when the weed pressure is not as bad. Next slide. So our main mulch source is wood chips from local companies. And so we estimate that we've spread several thousand yards of wood chips over the years. Some of our fields have gotten up to 10 feet of mulch. Next slide. Another form of mulch is we collect leaves on farm and also from community members. We typically get, I would say, 20 super sacks and maybe 100 bags of leaves from local community members. Next slide. As I was speaking about before, we get giant straw bales from local farms. You have to be really careful about where your straw comes from because a lot of them can contain herbicides that are persistent even after they've been sitting out for a couple of years. Next slide. Field preparation. Next slide. So we are animal and human powered. We don't use tractors for field prep. All of our wood chips and compost is spread with buckets, wheelbarrows, and humans. Next slide. Depending on the type of field, I don't know what's happening with the slides. Okay. Depending on the type of field and crop we're growing depends on the type of mulch. The picture you see here is this year's garlic and shallot field, which we planted and then we mulched with probably 4 or 5 inches of organic straw. And that's gonna control the weeds, break down, add fertility, and we should get some beautiful garlic. Next slide. Weed blocking, I kind of talked about that before, depending on the field. We use coffee sacks and cardboard. Next slide. So here's some photos of our no-till fields. So depending on the types of crops that we're planting, is how we prep them. So we have about an acre of permanent beds. And so all of the walkways and perimeters receive a layer of wood chips every year. The permanent beds we actually have marked with metal stakes. And so depending on what's going to be planted that year is how we prep. Sometimes we do leaf mulch. Typically we do a layer of a couple inches of compost. So this is how most of the farm looks for leafy crops, and smaller crops, root crops. Next slide. And then we have about an acre and a quarter of heavy mulch. And so you can see in the first photo, this particular field has gotten mulch for 11 years. And a lot of people will come out and look at the field and say that it looks fairly barren, and then you dig and it's amazing black gold underneath the wood chips. And so these fields are our main dry farmed fields, and there are certain crops that thrive in this environment. Next slide. We also do targeted cover crops because you can't cover crop in heavy mulch. Where we've got permanent beds and trellises, we cover crop in place. So a lot of our trellises will plant favas in the fall and then chop and drop, and that adds fertility and mulch to next year's crops. So we do this with a lot of our tomato fields. Next slide. I do a lot of things that no one does. So what this is we do a lot of infield composting. So every time we either need to redo a field or we're converting a new field, if we haven't run animals through, we typically will leave grass and we will just start, I guess you call it sheet mulching. And so as shown in this picture, this past year we took about an eighth of an acre and we got organic food waste from a local company, and then on-farm waste, and we mulched the whole season. Anything that came off the farm was just layered in this field. Um, and then later in the season, we covered it with straw and that will decompose. And so next year, this will actually be our melon field. Next slide. Another type of composting we do in on permanent trellises and other types of plantings, we trench compost. So we'll dig trenches and holes and we'll put between 12 and 18 inches of compost and we'll backfill with dirt and compost, and just plant directly in that. So in the photo, this is actually bokashi compost, which is a fermented compost. And so we did that last spring, covered it with dirt, and then 3 weeks later we planted about 100 storage tomatoes that grew beautifully on no water, no fertilizer, just the compost we had put in the trenches. Next slide. Soil testing. So backtracking to the last photo, but I'll talk about this. Last year, I did a massive trial on the Italian storage tomatoes that I didn't know much about. And so I reached out to Amy Garrett, which is with the Dry Farming Institute on Instagram, and she was how I connected with Lucas. And so last week, Lucas and OSU sent out Andy Gallagher to do a soil test. And so this is a picture of him taking a 4 or 5 foot core sample of our soil. Next slide. And so he's going to be doing an analysis of that over the next week, I believe. And we'll be talking about the results. I'll also be speaking at the OSU Small Farms Conference. And so this is just, a picture shows kind of how the soil changes color and texture. He also found some clay. We've got pockets of clay around the farm. Next slide. So dry farmed crops, not all crops do well in dry farmed conditions. The number one crop we grow is cucurbits, which is spelled wrong, which includes winter squash, summer squash, cucumbers, and melons. So for the past 10 plus years, we have not watered any of these crops. And in the previous picture shown that was wood chips with the holes, we typically will heavy mulch with wood chips and then transplant our starts directly into the heavy mulch. We typically water once at planting, and then they receive no water other than rainfall. So what we found over the years is we did a trial field, and so if you have squash that's watered versus unwatered, the ones that are watered, grow, do really well, and the ones that are dry farmed will spend a couple weeks. They just look terrible and wilted. And I theorize they're um, developing a root system and looking for water. And then not only do they catch up to their watered counterparts, but sometimes outperform them. And so we have had beautiful harvests of all the above crops in dry farmed conditions. Next slide. Here's a photo of a melon field and a couple pictures of watermelons. Um, we can get 25-pound watermelons from dry farmed conditions. And it blows people's mind that you can get melons with no water, but this crop does really, really well. Next slide. The story behind this is, so we've got pigs that we rotate, and I was kind of talking about how the pigs will prep the field, and then a lot of times we weed block and wood chip, and then we'll let it decompose for 12 to 18 months before we plant in it. Every fall, grocery stores have pumpkins and gourds that they give away. And so I receive the gourds and the pumpkins to feed my pigs at the end of the season. And so they eat them and deposit the seeds and fertilize them. And so every year we typically have one site where we have volunteer pumpkins, and we call them pig pumpkins. And so this photo, I think we got 500 to 800 gourds this year that were planted by our pigs. Next slide. Another crop that does really well in dry farmed conditions are nightshades. So that would encompass tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. And once again, we plant the same way. We start the starts in the greenhouse. We pull back the wood chips, plant the start, water once, and then let it grow. And we have found tomatoes are the #1 crop that thrives in dry farming conditions. Next slide. And as I was talking about, a lot of perennial crops. So we've got a little over 50 fruit trees, 9 varieties of grapes, strawberries, and blueberries, and they are all dry farmed and also do very well in those conditions. All of the plants have heavy mulch. Next slide. So the pros and cons. So the #1 con to dry farming is detrivores. So slugs, snails, pill bugs, millipedes. They thrive in heavy mulch, moist conditions. So I've just created 2 acres of the perfect habitat for these critters on my farm. And so I would say that is the biggest con to dry farming. Next slide.
Hey
Uh,
there. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm
oh,
chiming in. I would
am I
love,
going over?
we want to hear absolutely every single word that you have. Unfortunately, we
Oh,
are needing to transition.
oh,
Maybe
I'm
you want
sorry.
to wrap up with some final thoughts, and then I'll just share that there's some really wonderful questions in the chat box we're not going to be able to address at this time.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so
Okay.
what we can do is you'd be welcome to look at those in the chat. And also, we'll be able to document them and see if we can get them answered in other ways as well. So yeah, just welcome a final thought here as we transition on, and just really grateful for your time and all that you have to share.
Yeah, and fungus. Well, wrapping up really quickly. So we are currently doing multiple research studies this upcoming year. We've just built a facility and we're focusing on climate change mitigation strategies and alternative composting. And so we're doing dry farming seed trials, dry farming variety trials, and alternative composting. So fish emulsion, bokashi, KNF, Jadam. If you're interested in learning more about what we're doing, you can either email me. I think Lucas is going to put it in the comments, but you can email or follow on Instagram. We're developing online video resources for composting this coming year, and we are probably going to have about 25 classes in 2025. So we'd love to hear from you if you're interested. Thank you.